Hi and welcome to today's presentation where we have the pleasure to present GreenMobility. To help us through today, we are joined by CFO Anders Wall. Today's presentation will cover the Q2 or half-year results 2023, fresh off the press from this morning. I saw you had some guidance change, but I think the main message was that the strategy changes is on the way, and that of course means on the way to profitability in 24 and as the main headline. As always, you're very welcome to ask questions in the box down below. Do it during the presentation. I will see if you fit in, or after. Do it in Danish or in English, and if you do it in Danish, I will try and translate it to the best of my ability. But for now, I think I will hand the call over to you, Anders.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome everyone. And as Michael introduced, yes, it is our half-year report, and I think all say at a satisfactory level. We've seen some good effects of the movement of cars, but also some challenges in that, which of course I will go through in the presentation. As per usual, just a small overview. I'll get back into the numbers, but also to sort of clearly say that we have definitively closed our Swedish and German markets and are now present in 4 countries with a total of 7 cities, so Finland, Denmark, Belgium, and Netherlands. I'll come back to the individual markets later on in the presentation, but just to have an overview on our location. The fleet, as the only figure from here I'll touch on this slide, is also unchanged. It has been, as we've announced, a matter of moving cars between markets, but the total fleet is still at the same level. So if we jump to some of the figures, the highlights, I'm not going to go through all of the P&L figures and balance sheet. If you have questions, you're of course welcome to post them, but otherwise focus on the main areas for GreenMobility. Second half delivered a growth compared to last year of 29%, and overall satisfactory. We've seen a continuous growth in all our markets, of course with some challenges in the various markets. We are very diligent on our clear goal of making the company profitable in 2024. That's been the basis of the 2 markets that we closed early in the year, but also all the activities that we've carried out during Q2 and which is sort of summed up in this report. But of course, it also goes very much into the activities prepared and planned for the second half of the year. So we remain very focused on this new strategy, core markets, and bringing the company into a profitable level. As mentioned before, we've relocated cars from the 2 closed markets during the first quarter. They are firmly in place and have taken up revenue in sort of in different levels. I'll come back to that in a minute as well. During the last part of Q2, actually during June, we decided to carry out a cost reduction across the company, realizing that there are things that we can do more effectively, but of course also by consolidating the entire company into fewer markets, also gave some opportunities of reprioritizing tasks both at our head office but also in the individual markets. These cost reductions have both a combination of team members who've left the company, but also on other operational cost levels that we see across the board. So overall, as we see, we've improved the business foundation, we've lowered our cost, and we continue to build up revenue, and of course all in line with the strategy we've set. First half of 23 generated a result, a negative loss of 27.7 million, which is roughly 19% better compared to last year. But you also have to factor in, as we reported during Q1, that in this cost we've also included one-offs in the level of 6 million Danish kroner that has been tied to the closing of markets and of course moving of cars as well. So the real result should actually be even better than what we have here. Customer intake continues across the board in all markets, and of course also we see a continuous increase in trips of fleet. Of course the cities have gone down compared to last year. Overall, we see a stronger Q2, and we also expect a continued growth in the coming quarters as the cars are now settling in their individual markets. One of the things that we've also announced this morning is an adjustment of our guidance, and I'll give you a little background on that. As mentioned, the cars have been moved. They are fully operational in all markets, but it's also been clear during especially second quarter that the expectations we had for the rate of uptake of revenue in new markets have been slower than expected. Some of it is of course due to introducing a lot of cars in a very short amount of time, but the reality is that it is still taking up revenue. They are growing, but the pace has been a bit slower than expected. So looking at that going forward, that's one of the reasons why we've adjusted the guidance, at least on top line. On the other hand, where we see the effects from our cost reductions, of course also including the one-off we had in the beginning of the year, we see that the full effects we'll have from cost reduction during Q4. Looking at all this together, we actually expect an improvement on our result. So while we've reduced our top line, we've also improved our result. So all in all, we now expect a top line of between 120 and 130 million, lowered roughly 15 million, and then an improved result by 3 million. So now between 32 and 42 million. Of course, still a loss, although, but better. To me, the important part is actually what we see in between. So while we do expect a lower revenue, it hasn't had a negative. Actually, it ends up having a positive effect on our result. So the business that we operate has become much more effective and improved across several areas. So all in all, it's we look forward and we can see very clearly that the actions we've made to bring the company into profitability are working and improving month by month.
And as I know, it can be hard to do this, which part, but is it you underestimated the cannibalization effect of bringing new cars, or is it that the consumer or weather related? You have any idea why you were surprised by that? Was it the cannibalization effect you underestimated, or is it on the consumer side that there has been some hiccups or still a little bit hesitancy to spend by the consumer in this second quarter?
We actually, from the consumer perspective, we see that there is a continuous uptake. More and more customers are using car sharing. It's also being supported more and more market by market. So while of course there will always be changes in consumers, I think that we have to realize that the main effect is that we've been maybe too optimistic on how quickly we would have this uptake.
Yeah.
The uptake has been based on previously when we've either moved or introduced more cars in our fleet, which we have done previously in various markets. So it hasn't been just a wild guess, but we also have to realize that clearly it's going to take a little longer.
Yes.
But here as I said, we feel quite comfortable, and I think to us that the main part is also we are tracking according to our strategy, according to our very clear goals set for next year. Another important part, of course, is what we see in the coming months, second half, and also how that affects our liquidity position. So of course there's been a lot of focus, a lot of work, especially from our operational team in handling this movement, especially in the start of the year. Now it's very much focus on the commercial aspects ahead of us. But one of the things we are also working very much on at the moment is the renewal of our fleet. As you may know, we have quite a few Renault Zoes. Some of them are sort of a bit older now, so there's a natural renewal of the fleet, and so we are slowly selling off parts of the fleet and readjusting that. And some of these will be changed into more premium cars. And to be clear, in our mind, premium and of course still electric cars, but premium cars are not sort of luxury segment, but it's what you would normally view as middle segment. We already operate Polestars here in Copenhagen. We have Renault Meganes in Amsterdam, and this level we see the possibility and also uptake from additional customer groups. We can expand into other types of customers. There are lots of customers who do like car sharing, but for various reasons would prefer another car than the Zoe. It can be for business perspective or for longer travel distances and so on. So we will definitely still keep a main part of the fleet as a smaller car like the Zoe, but introduce more and more premium electric cars. We're also working very much on reducing the holding cost we have on the cars. So the financing and the depreciation of the cars, and it's a big balance of what price do we buy the cars at, and what can we sell them at, potentially also in a shorter amount of time. But there's a lot of gains to be made here, especially because we now see a completely different electric car market than we did 2, 3, 4 years ago when we bought a lot of the Zoes that we have today. So that has a big effect. Looking into second half, with the adjusted guidance we have, it's also very clear. It means that we have to generate a revenue between 65 and 75 million to reach the 120 to 130. We, as mentioned, we've reduced our cost level, and we have these one-offs. So, and then in addition, based on the cars that we're planning to sell, we have an expectation that we can generate a profit of between 5 and 10 million. Between 5 and 10 million kroner on these, due to that, to the current low book value we have on our cars. So all of that put together, of course, they are important factors when we look at our liquidity, which at the end of the first half was at 12.2 million. And which also means that with the activities and the business plans we have, we don't see an immediate need for adding capital. But at the same time, we also realize that things may happen. We saw last year increase in interest, electricity prices going up, and a lot of other things impacting the environment. So there are things that, regardless of how well we run the business, may impact us, and which is also why we said we're in the process of looking into ways of having additional cash available to create a sort of a bit more of a cushion. So if there are any sort of changes in the coming months, we can adapt that. This can be done in various ways, whether it's loans or a capital raise or other ways. That's not set. And I think it's also important to stress that we're not talking about huge sums. It will be a smaller amount, but it's purely to support our operation on the liquidity side. So if there are any bumps along the way, then we can absorb that without any problems.
Perfect. Anders, maybe we should take, because there's some questions surrounding the guidance. You know, there is one in general, whether you can bridge how you are coming from lowering revenue guidance 15 million and raising earnings guidance, and EBITDA guidance 3 million. And there's a question here also, maybe to kick off. Is it because of this sales you are now is the improvement in the guidance partly a result of you realizing some gains on the sale of the cars?
I would actually add that as an additional gain. If you look at it and you say, look, the cost side that we had in the first half of year, we take out the one-offs, and then we also include the planned upside in from our cost reductions, and then compare that to the revenue level for the second half. It's a simple calculation, but that also supports the guidance level that we have. Of course, having the possibility of selling these cars will generate additional upside for the company.
So that's not included in the new guidance. If you realize that, then the result may even be better, or the cash flow may even be better.
Yeah. But let's stay where we are for the moment.
But it's just to understand whether this one helps you or this will come on top of it. Perfect. I think we
have cars we haven't sold. It's an expectation, right?
It's an expectation. Yeah.
Things may change. So we're guiding on the parts that we know, and we have realized a lower cost base, and of course the revenue will continue to develop market by market.
And is that an indication? Is that something you think will continue? That the book value, or you might say the rate that you depreciate your cars with, actually is better than expected in the rest of the fleet, or is that some special circumstances on some cars you bought at a certain time?
I would almost say if I could answer you precisely on that, I should probably switch industry.
That's okay.
But no, I think I wouldn't presume that to happen, because that has gone up and down. It also, and of course, it ties very much into the current prices on EVs compared to the ones we bought them at, and then again the remarketing market where that is currently. So it might be a scenario in 2 years, but it might also be the opposite.
That's fair.
So I don't want to put too many guarantees or guesses.
That's okay, Anders.
And I think it's important to stress, of course, that the business of GreenMobility is to run our service. We've never built the business, and that's not the plan, to build it on buying or selling cars. We may have a gain, but it could also be the case that in 2 years we'll have a loss on it. So I think our normal priority would always be to be as close to the market level as possible.
Perfect.
Did you have more questions?
No. Let's continue. Then we will take the rest in the end.
We'll take the next one. And a few other things, maybe slightly less, but still something that certainly has an impact on the business as well. They may not be as crucial as liquidity and guidance, but I think for us it's at least some of the positive things when we look into daily operation. Our energy fee, we've finally been able to remove that. It's something that we've been looking forward to. As you may know, we introduced it in the fall when electricity and charging cost more than doubled, and was simply a necessity. Of course, it's never been something that we were fond of, and we've also said clearly that once market prices dropped again, we will remove it. And finally, they adopted in Denmark as well. Charging has been late in reducing in Denmark. We saw electricity prices in private household going down already around March, but charging has waited a little longer. But now it's done, and we've taken it away from all markets, and I think it makes it much more transparent to our customers as well. And hopefully we'll never have to do that again, and we'll see electricity prices being at least a bit more predictable. Then I also included a little bit on our Green Saver. It's a subscription product that we've had for some time, and something that we see a strong growth in. As also mentioned here, a little more than 80% since last year. And today, actually, almost a quarter of our trips are done by one of our subscription members. To me, of course, it shows very clear that we have a strong core customer base who use our cars quite often, and they do take a lot of trips. And this is a figure that we see growing across all markets. Amsterdam is the latest city market where we introduced it, so they are a little behind. But across all our markets, this is a strong usage of our cars. And it's a program where we get a fixed monthly fee. Then, as a customer, you get a reduction on the prices and other fees that we have in the business. So if you're a regular and regular customer uses of our service frequently, then it's definitely an advantage to have that membership. So hopefully we'll see that go up. It's definitely something that we also spend a lot of time working on with our marketing team and so on. Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time. Of course, as we continue to grow, this also has a clear impact on the environmental effect that we have in the cities that we operate in. And from here into the individual markets that we operate in, Copenhagen, as you can see, it's almost the graph is getting too big. But in the second quarter, Copenhagen realized an average revenue of 9,000 Danish kroner per car. Of course, it's a little bit less than what we saw last year, but you also have to factor in this part that the fleet in Copenhagen was increased by roughly 30% during the first quarter, which is also one of the reasons why it dropped a little bit in first quarter. But now the cars are taking up revenue quite nicely. Of course, Copenhagen still being our biggest and oldest market. So I think here we see it quite comfortable. Moving on to Aarhus as the second city in Denmark. Here we also increased the fleet and like Copenhagen, roughly with 30%, which of course has an impact. It is a smaller city, but the advantage of us increasing the fleet is also that we can increase the zone that we operate in. At Aarhus, there are various areas, so in the outskirts or near Aarhus, where we have either big schools or big industrial shopping areas that we're now able to include. So we've expanded the zone in where you can find a GreenMobility, added new hotspots, and also started some new commercial partnerships in Aarhus, all of course to support a continued development in the usage of our cars in Aarhus. And if we jump to the next, we have Belgium, and Belgium is the country we have under Belgium is actually 3 cities, so Ghent, Antwerp, and Brussels. And it's very clear that when you look at last year and past, the traction was very positive, going only one way, and then from the start of this year, there's a big drop. In all fairness, we actually doubled the fleet, going from around 190 cars to now 390 cars. And of course, that takes a little time to absorb, but also where we've seen it's gone a little slower in Q2 than expected. Not Brussels, sorry, Belgium is still among our strongest markets. So our expectations are, I would say, unchanged. We do see a good uptake. We've also seen new competitors enter the market, and I think that at least for now, still just it supports increased usage of the fleet. So we do expect that this will the revenue per car will increase as we go into the second half. And of course, just to be clear, that the total revenue in Belgium has gone up because there are that many more cars now. Then we have the Netherlands or Amsterdam, which is the only city we're in the Netherlands. And I think here we also increased the fleet actually several times. We had last year at the summer we had around 110 cars. Then by start of first quarter we had 150 cars, and then by start of second quarter we have 250 cars. So of course the graph when we look at revenue per car is a little unfair, but at the same time it's also clear that this is a market that needs to grow and grow faster, because Amsterdam is a big city. It's probably one, if not the city in Europe that has the biggest support from the city in terms of changing mobility, changing parking, changing charging, all that into sustainable ways. So here there are essentially no excuses. We have to increase the revenue and revenue per car as well. So of course a big focus for us. This, I think, one of the unique parts of Amsterdam is that they start in June, they are starting to regularly measure the effects of shared cars versus own cars, and they are continuously supporting it. So I think there are no boundaries from the city in that sense, no infrastructural boundaries. This is purely a matter of getting more trips and working diligently on that on our side. Last, we have Finland, and Finland has also seen some development during the first half. We haven't changed the fleet, so the fleet in Finland is as we did in June, July last year. We increased the fleet from 60 to 150 cars. That's still the case in Finland, and really a matter of growing the business now. First quarter was slow, which is usually the case also in Finland. They do have a bit more tough winters than we see in other markets. So we've spent the time also here increasing the zone. There are areas outside Helsinki that has the potential for much more revenue. At the same time also working with new hotspots, making it easier for our customers, and thus also increasing the trips. And so far we see a good uptake on that, a good reaction from our customers in Finland. So confident that we will continue building that market as well. I think that was the last part for me.
Perfect, Anders. We have some questions if we should run through them.
Of course.
There's a question here. Which of your core markets are performing the best, and have seen any changes to those what has been performing best? And I guess also here you touched a little bit about the competitive situation. We've seen a little bit in Copenhagen. I know it's a fixed parking competitive that has come in with some cars. So can you see which are the best performing markets, and maybe touch a little bit upon whether you're seeing market condition changing in any of in the markets?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Copenhagen is our best market, but the answer is a little bit more complicated than that, because Copenhagen is a market where we've been for 7 years. It's also where we have the largest part of the fleet. Probably it wouldn't help if we put 600 cars in Finland, but the point is that there's an element of time as well. So I've actually tried to sort of stack the individual markets versus time. If we go back to when after 2 years in Copenhagen, what level were we at, and using that as a measure, then I would say we are actually quite good off in most markets. But of course also each market is independent. There are, as you say, there are competitors, there are local infrastructure, there's a number of things that may impact our business. Competition is still we still see that competition actually helps all of us. It helps the market to develop. Of course, at one point you will reach a saturated market, and there will be too many cars. And that, of course, also is very market independent, because if I were to say that, okay, Copenhagen could have a maximum of 2,000 shared cars, that may be the case right now, but not in 2 years. So as more and more customers are using car sharing, then the limit moves as well. So customers is one part. We've also seen a new competitor here in Copenhagen, and they do more station-based, so typically longer trips. I think that's fundamentally is good. Would we prefer to be the only one? I think that's it's a simple question, but overall the trends, the underlying trends and support are good in all markets. And now I forgot all the elements of your question. So
no, I think you actually covered Copenhagen and then the competitive situation that I know it's market by market, and as you said, it's lifting everything. So it was more to see if there was some markets where suddenly some competitors have moved a lot of cars in or started investing again. I guess we assume everybody has been consolidating themselves a little bit in this space. So it was more to get the feel on whether someone is again starting to really expand or go aggressively, and I don't think I got that feeling from your answer, Anders.
Okay, cool.
Then there's do you expect to raise more cash, or do you expect to be able to get to profit with any equity raise? I know you answered it quite, but if I should understand you could actually go there according to your plans without any equity case, but you are putting in a buffer. Is that correct? For if you don't follow your plans exactly.
That's the key focus from us. That you always want to have a little. Or at least a certain amount of buffer to withstand any changes in the market. But so for us, for me, that if we are to raise capital, it will be to have that buffer and then continue the path towards profitability, which we are well underway.
Then there's a question here. Have you considered only having Danish cities? Revenue seems to be highest in Denmark, or is that too limited for your business model to work to only target Denmark?
Well, I think it's you can go either way probably. We've made a very clear ambition what we want. We want to create a car sharing company, a sustainable car sharing company that spans all of Europe. There's still some way to go. And I fully understand when you look at the numbers, okay, Denmark is the biggest, okay, we could fast track a lot. But I think ultimately we will end up with a small company that probably is not that interesting, at least not to have on the stock market. Then it becomes a different type of company. But what it will certainly do also, it will limit our possibilities for further growth, because there will be a level of growth we can make in Denmark. And there are, maybe there's one more city than Copenhagen, Aarhus, I'm not even sure. It becomes, if we were to go to Odense or Aalborg, it will be more difficult. Because you don't have the same mobility during the day. So for us to grow as a company, we need the international market as well. So I understand the question. I don't see it as a way for us.
And then consolidation, as a way of you moving out, muscle means something in this business, clearly. So any thoughts there? I know you can't give us details, but maybe consolidation in a way to get more muscles to move abroad. Any thoughts? Is that debated by your board or in the management team of the company?
Well, I mean, of course, what goes on the board here I can't disclose, but
I know.
I think, but what I can say, of course, that we've already seen some extent of consolidation in the European market, and I think we should expect that to continue. And you're right that there are the biggest ones will have it presumably most easy, and then you will control more of the markets. So it's certainly something that always comes into play, and there are opportunities, but we don't have any. I mean, to be clear, there are no active projects going on in that direction. But I think if we were not following the market and not keeping our eyes open, we would also not be doing our job. So of course we always look at opportunities. I think that's natural.
There's a question here on the balance sheet. How are your loans in general exposed to those increasing interest rates we are seeing around and hearing a lot about and also experiencing?
We are. The answer is clear. We are exposed to the increasing interest, and which is also why you can see our financial costs have gone up quite significantly compared to first half last year. And this is of course tied to our loan. We have a loan with the Danish Green Investment Fund, but it's also tied to some of our leasing contracts. So and that's reality, and we can't. So yes, the clear answer is
you would like the interest to fall again. It will be visible in your P&L if it does. It's not fixed loan, everything. Perfect.
Yeah.
How many cars do you expect to sell in H2, and how many new premium cars are you targeting? And lastly, a third question there: how do you expect to finance the new premium cars?
Well, we haven't put a final amount on the cars, but with a fleet of 1,600 cars, I mean, we are talking about a significant level, also due to some of them being of 4 years or even older. So some of them needs to go out. It's very clear. But it's also a matter, of course, that how many? Well, no, sorry, not. But what's the level? If I were to put 1,000 cars for sale tomorrow, I wouldn't get a good price. So this is also something that we will do over time, and do it clever. I mean, it should be very clear. But ultimately, I think, I mean, we will have a significant part of the fleet that we will renew. Some of it will definitely be in the coming month. Some of it may also be in next year. Most of it is due to sort of a normal cycle in the business, and some of it is based on us wanting to have new and other cars. For the premium cars, it depends ultimately. I think all new cars will depend very much on the price. If you see some of the new retail prices on cars, they're very high, but we also see sometimes that there may be opportunities where we can take on cars at a lower price, because there are cars that needs to move. So it's very much about spending more active time in working with the fleet and the possibilities that we have in terms of new cars.
And now I'll praise you a little bit, Anna. So the 5 to 10 million in guidance you're giving on used car sales, you're not willing to give us a number how many cars that include. And I know it's a wide range, and you can also give a wide range on the expected sales, but you're not willing to give us that number. Is that correct?
Oh no, I mean no, because it can vary a lot.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And then the last question, and maybe we should dig in. I am not sure you want to give it. What's the gross profit on a per country or city basis? I don't know whether you're willing to give out the numbers, but could we maybe start talking a little bit about the if you are, then let's take them per city. Then I have done my job and asked the questions. If you are not, could we talk a little about the levels where you are expecting to see the different cities being on a gross profit level.
Yeah.
So let's take first, are you willing to give the gross profit per country?
No, we at least currently we don't disclose them. And also why they're not in the interim report, because
in the report
they would have need to be there as well.
Yeah.
For one, but the way we usually look at it is that when we look at an average city, then cost per car is somewhere between 7.5 and 8,000 kroner. Full operation in that city.
Yeah.
Of course, some cities may be 100, 200 lower or 100, 200 higher. So when you look at it from that perspective, and then against the slides where we take, for example, we have Copenhagen, okay, at the 9,000. So Copenhagen is profitable. And very clearly the rest of the markets are not.
So it was actually maybe to get into that. So you say not big differences, if I should read your word, not big differences, a couple of hundreds in this one in every city. So we shouldn't see any city as being much more expensive for you to operate. Is that correct?
Yeah, the biggest differences, where we see differences, are typically tied to parking, where, for example, Copenhagen has free parking for electric vehicles, but in Amsterdam we pay for parking.
Okay.
Or we have a license, and of course that has an impact. If you have, I would say that's one of the parts, and then if you have sort of extraordinary damages in one market, but that's more a variable cost. When we look at it from a fixed perspective and in a normalized world, where we are now, where interests are more or less the same level, sorry, not interest, electricity are back to normal, then that's the level we see. And then you can sort of have that and then hold it against the revenue lines per market.
And the 7.5 and 8 is going back to, even if you had a very high inflationary world, actually the model you gave us around 3 years ago, is that because also bringing in more cars to the cities than maybe you expected here in the start, is bringing that cost down, or a little bit feeling on how you actually have kept that level as for, I think maybe it was 7,000 or 7,500 when you
we started at 7,500, and now we see it's closer. It's more like 8,000.
Yeah.
And of course that's due to inflation. But if it was purely inflation, then it would actually be higher. So we've also improved our operation along the way, and of course we'll continue to do that. And also why we're looking at, I mean, the cost of the car is roughly 1/3 of the cost as in any city. So if we can work with the cost of the car, can we bring the holding cost down just by, let's say, 10-20%? That has a big impact on the operation. Sorry, the cost for that city. The parking, I mean, if there is a parking fee to be paid, we have to pay it.
So the car actually does matter, because I also have another question for you, because I know not in the premium segment, but actually if I should say a Renault Zoe or something like that, if we are looking a little bit abroad away from the European producers, I don't know whether you're willing to do that. It really looks like the prices are coming down on that type of car. Maybe not the premium car, but on the Renault Zoe type, I would say the 200-kilometer range and such one. You're starting to see what 60,000-70,000 kroner cars coming to markets. So could that also actually change your model and lower it in the future, or any thoughts about that?
Absolutely. I think we have to find the best possible car at the best possible price. That sounds very nice. It's easy to say, right? But it's looking across beyond brands and looking at where do we get a reliable car, because that's also a part. I mean, that's not to say anything bad about Chinese cars. I don't have a problem with Chinese. I could also, I mean, we have the Polestar today. It's partly built by China, or it's owned by China. There are parts in any OEM. There are parts from China. So I don't have a problem with the cars coming from China. not as such. We can discuss the sustainability part of it. That's a different discussion. But to me, can we get a good, reliable car at a lower cost? Then that's interesting. We can also look at, I've seen examples from other car sharers, typically in the south of Europe, where they have very cheap cars, not necessarily Chinese, but just very cheap cars, very small cars. They don't have a lot of fancy equipment, but they're cheap. Okay, would that work for us as well? So it's just to sort of support the point that, to me, we are looking at a lot of different cars, because we can have very cheap cars that will serve one segment of our customers, and then we can have more premium cars, wherever they come from, will serve another part of our customer base. So I think the conclusion, or at least what I can say for now, is that we will slowly, and this is not going to happen tomorrow, but we'll slowly move away from having only one car in the fleet.
Perfect. I think that was all the questions. Thank you for you joining us and answering questions and presenting your results from H1, and thank you to everybody for listening.
Thank you everyone for